Well, now I want to turn to the S High Rail modeling. And for that, we have our sponsor is American Models, and I'd like to run their video.
American Models, manufacturers of quality S-scale equipment for more than 40 years. We have 13 types of locomotive: the Alco FA2 freight engine, the Alco PA1 passenger diesel, RS3 and RS11 road switchers, EMD, FP7, GP9 R18, GP35, E8 passenger engines, and Amtrak F40 PH diesels, the Baldwin S12 switcher, Fairbanks Morris Trainmaster, and the GE U25B. And of course, the classic GG1 electric. We also manufacture 11 types of freight cars, 2 styles of caboose, and heavyweight and Bud streamlined passenger cars. We have our own line of track and roadbed. We provide parts and service for everything we sell. Check us out at AmericanModels.com or call us at 734-449-1100.
And the host for this segment is not with us this evening. He had a conflict, Joel Weber, but Chris Rathner has volunteered to step in and take over for Joel this evening. Chris, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, Jim. Hello, everybody. I'll do the best I can. It might come across as a little disjointed because Joel threw this at me on Monday evening, and it's been a kind of a busy week, but we'll see if everything works here. This was a project that I started many years ago, and I finally resolved myself to finish everything. And I call it an A.C. Gilbert American Flyer coulda, woulda, shoulda story. And by that, I mean, it's because this is something that Gilbert could have made, and I chose to do it in that vein, partially because it's a little bit easier as opposed to cutting up cars and splicing shells and everything. So these are a style of car that A.C. Gilbert made in the, they actually made them pre-war, but they were still stamped sheet metal then. So these are post-war cars. The one on the bottom in the New Haven is that's up to about 1950. And then from 50 on, why they cheapened the cars and went to a different, they went to a plain plastic that was painted, and they went to a stamped metal chassis. And here's an example of the two types of chassis. And this car is modeled after an Osgood Bradley streamlined car developed in 1934 for the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. And I'd become a fan of that railroad because A.C. Gilbert was also located in New Haven, Connecticut. And so about 1954, the New Haven was taken over by a financier named Patrick McGinnis. And the biggest thing that he's noted for is he adopted a bright, flashy paint scheme. And this type of engine was the first engine to be painted in this scheme, this red, orange, black, and white. And this is a model of an EP5 electric. And so that was they were the very first engines painted that way. And afterwards, all of New Haven's rolling stock started to receive variations of that. But what we tended to see a lot on the passenger cars was both the pre-war streamliners and the heavyweights would get the black orange or the black shell with the red orange letterboard and white lettering. Well, while I'm researching some New Haven books that I have, I discovered this. They had taken 4 of the pre-war coaches and painted them in this slightly different scheme. As you can see, with the red orange on top, black in the middle, white below the windowsills, that would be a great match behind the EP5 locomotive. And if you notice on the captions, oh, and by the way, I want to say all the photos of prototype cars are used by permission of the New Haven Railroad Historical and Technical Association. But so there were 4 cars painted this way. As they say, number 8270, 8295, 8369, and 8392. And they were only painted that way for 6 months, but that was good enough for me. So I resolved that I'm going to make some New Haven cars like that. It turns out they also had some round roof baggage cars, and they only took and repainted 2 of those in the McGinnis scheme, as you see, with the red, again, with the red orange letterboard, red orange doors, and then the black body, white lettering. So this was my first car I started. I had a little help. This car was originally an American Flyer model 732 operating baggage car. That's why you see the mechanism inside the left-hand door. When the car was operated, the door on the right side would flip open and a figure would push out a baggage cube. I enhanced this car by adding a light bulb inside, which Gilbert did with their operating boxcars. And all the cars came with the Bettendorf style trucks. Okay. The lettering is a combination, which I used on all the cars, is a combination of micro scale, O scale, and HO scale decals. Now, all of the straight lettering, such as the numbers and the Railway Express Agency, I applied manually one letter or number at a time using white dry transfers. And there's a little closer view of it. And I tried to make sure that the lettering, all the lettering matched the prototype. So even though these are still could be considered toy train cars because of their general length and the incorrect trucks, I still wanted to take a somewhat prototype look to it. Now, this car is the way Gilbert painted them. This particular car is meant to go with their animated station. People, the station had a vibrating mat, and people would move around mill around the station. And you could park the car at the station, open the left and right doors, and open the gates on the station, and the people would go through the car. And I always thought that Gilbert kind of missed the boat on that by making the guideway the full height of the car from the floor to the ceiling, and putting the frosted windows in. Now, granted, that partially hid the vibrating mechanism, which you can see behind the middle window, which is that's that yellow and a little bit of copper there. That's the vibrating coil. Here's a close-up of one of the entry door, or actually this is the exit door, and you can see how it's so dark that the guideway goes all the way to the top. Well, it turns out you don't really need a guideway that tall. So I started by modifying the car for that, and then I decided that would be one of my McGinnis scheme paint jobs, because all of the painted cars had black plastic shells. So I stripped them using dishwashing detergent, and I'd soak the car for several days in a large container, and then brush it with an old toothbrush and repeat as necessary until I got a clean black shell. And before any collector goes into convulsions, these were all cars that were only, the paint jobs were pretty well dinged up. And, I wasn't destroying like some excellent or mint condition car, which some collectors would go into spasms over. So this is how the car turned out. And the car body is the black is the natural black of the car body. And then the white paint, I used Testor's 2943 bright white spray. And I masked this using photo frisket film. And the red orange paint is AccuPaint New Haven number 409 red orange. So I after decaling, I gloss coated the entire car with Testors 1261 gloss coat. So I cut the guyways down, as you can see, to the window, below the windowsill level, painted them white to make it more visible of the people inside, and put in clear plastic in place of the frosted plastic. Now, if you look to the left, you'll notice the small window to the left has been frosted. I did that because above that are those two round roof vents. Those would be the roof vents for the restrooms. So I tried to stay close to that. Now, here's a close up of the entry side. And as I said again, the decals were micro scales. And they actually, even though they are for another scale, they actually scaled out pretty close to prototype. Now, on the real cars, if I refer back to the initial photo of the prototype, you'll see that the N over H was set over the truck bolsters. But I thought that would look a little odd on these cars because the truck bolsters are set so close to the ends of the truck. You see, these have 7 paired windows and 2 small windows. The real cars were either 10 paired windows or 11 paired windows. Now, each of the cars I did was in a matching number to the prototypes. So this is number 8270. And I cut out the vestibules because they were molded solid. And so now you can see down either end of the car. And see people going through the car because I like animation. And as Jim knows, we just got done working on that modeling project that Cat's Paw is putting together. So one thing always bothered me, though, as I got the whole train built, I had 3 cars going around the layout lighted, and this one wasn't because the light would only come on when the coil was energized. So I worked out a way so that I could have lighting, but also still be without energizing the coil. So this is a photo of the pickup truck. So there's to the left side, the left side frame has a slot in it for a contact tab. You see to the right of the solder lug, there's a post. Well, I had to insulate all of that. So there's another shot of it. The cloth wire is going to the vibrator, and this was before I started the mod. So the cloth wire is going to the vibrator. The gray wire is one of the light wires. So then what I did was I put a piece of heat shrink tubing over the post that the pickup tab pivots on. And there's a pickup tab. And normally it would be the tab would be the same width all the way out. And what I did was I drilled out the hole on the left so it would easily slide over the stud with the heat shrink on it. And the notches you see just behind the bends of the tab, I filed that down so that I could put heat shrink tubing over that so that it wouldn't shart to the side frame. And the hole you see just about in the middle of the tab was a punch through to help hold the spring. Well, I had to insulate the spring too to prevent it from sharting. So I cut off the tip of a large eyedropper. It was actually an extra Woodland Scenics eyedropper I had, and drilled the hole of the tip of the eyedropper out slightly, and CA glued it over the little punch through stud. And you can also see to the left there the black heat shrink tubing that I used. And there's a top down view of it. And so you can see how it's over the punch through. And I had to drill it out just a little bit to make sure the spring wasn't pinched. And there's a view of it with the relief spring and the heat shrink. And there it is installed on the truck. And the final thing I had to do to prevent any sharting between the pickup tab and the stud was I added a white nylon washer you see under the clip holding the contact bar to the stud. And then I added a small solder lug crimp terminal, and I always solder my crimp terminals too for higher reliability. And I moved the cloth wire for the pickup coil to the stud. So now there's the net result. The car does not have to be in the station to be lit. The interiors for all the cars were done essentially the same. For this particular car, because of the space involved in the guideway, I just cut a couple of seats out and CA'd them to the chassis and put a few figures in to help complement the other cars. And there's another shot of the entry end of the car. Now, this is one of the straight shells. This is in a non-operating car. You can see the plain chassis in front of it. I tried to make it look, to the extent that I could, like the inside of the real car. I cut out bulkheads. I custom fit them. I started with one and then used it as a template to make the other ones. So you'll see to the left, there's a bulkhead at the vestibule, and the door is painted on, and I cut out a window in the door. The door is the correct color. It's a French, what they call it, a French gray. And then the ceiling you see is painted white to spread out to help diffuse the light. And now here's another view. It doesn't show up as well because it's so dark, but on the real car, the interior of the car was painted a very dark blue from the floor up to the windowsill. So I did that after I glued in my glazing. And there's another shot of the one end bell of the vestibule. And there's the other end. And I used some PC boards that I had around. And those are actually 2.7 volt lamps. And I'm driving them with a Dali adjustable voltage regulator that will go from 3/4 of a volt up to 6¼ volts. And I set the lamps a little at like 2.5 volts. And it, as you saw in the previous photo, that gives a nice realistic glow to the car. And on the what you see there, I painted a window on, since obviously I wouldn't want to perforate that, because then you'd see the electronics inside. And there's the other end of that. Both end vestibules are cut out. And I tried to paint, I used a little silver paint to try to paint the little door handle on. A little better lighting view.
Chris,
And
Chris, I hate to interrupt you, but we've got to close.
okay, I can zip through it real. If you want me to stop, I can.
No. That's fine. Go ahead, but we need to close it up.
Sure. So there's at any rate, there's how I hid the voltage regulator in what would be the restrooms. And I made the seating by cutting down. You can buy separate interior seating from American Models for their Bud cars. I cut off the ends, and there's the result. I painted the seats in the same color as this prototype seating. It was a blue and gray checkerboard floor, which would be nearly impossible to do with this assembly. So the best I could do is I painted in between the seats a blue floor with a gray aisle. And then I highlighted the seat edges with silver paint to try to make them look a little more like the chrome steel seating of the real seats. And there's a little higher, different angle view of it. And there you see one of the lighted cars. And there you can actually see through the doorway window at the passengers sitting in the car. And as I said, every car matches the real car number. And that's all I got.
Anybody have any questions for Chris? Chris, thank you so very much.
Sure.
You did a beautiful job. I really do appreciate you filling in for Joel tonight, and hope you'll come back often. I mean, this is fantastic stuff.
Hey, Chris, just one question.
Yes, sir.
So Are the moving figures, the vibration physical, so you can't reverse them, can you?
No, no,
Okay.
they are the figures have they originally were made with a nap that isn't available, but a good substitute is Surefine paint pad. You need a directional nap, and you have to cut it and glue it on the figures in the correct direction. You know, you could glue it on backwards and have somebody going backwards against the grain if you wanted to, just for fun. But yeah, that's
I
how
was,
they.
I was trying to think about if you could simulate having people walk around in the train car. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, the mat works best in one direction. They
Yeah.
do mill around on the station platform. I would have
Right.
to, I could show a video of that, but I would want to shoot that and give it to Ed to display, since we have had trouble with video sometimes.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
You just needed a final picture of all four of them sitting there with the engine.
Yeah, but that makes for a long, skinny picture. But yeah, with the baggage car and so I have the operating baggage, one operating car, operating passenger car, and 3 additional cars. But like you say, with that EP5, it makes a beautiful looking train, and I call it the Gilbert coulda, woulda, shoulda, because they really could have done it. All they would have needed was some paint masks. Now, maybe they wouldn't have bothered with the interior like I did, but that's, I looked to putting more prototypical trucks under it, but the only ones available had a longer wheelbase, and that actually interfered with the car body. So I figured I'd just leave it with the kind of trucks that Gilbert would have made it with, which is, they always use that Bettendorf's, that same freight truck on those particular cars. They didn't change their trucks till they got to the Streamline cars. So but it's got as much detail as I can put in it with what I was working with.
I think you did a beautiful job. Thanks so much for sharing.
Sure.
Look forward to hearing some more about your work, because I think you do such a fantastic job, Chris. Thank you.